Hey. Welcome back to page 3. I'm Ellie.
And I'm Sydney.
And in today's episode, we wanted to enter the book world again because when the hell does Sid and I not want to do that?
True.
And we decided that we're going to start doing a new little mini series on our channel, and it's going to be called Book Court. It's page 3 Book Court. So, or just court in general. Yeah. And we're going to pick a universe or tropes or people or things or whatever and have to be their like lawyer of defense and not know how we're going to go into it at all. Just like not know who we're having to defend when we go into it. So today we picked ACOTAR because what better way to start than ACOTAR?
And also, Sarah J. Maas just announced her 2 next books coming out. So this feels quite fitting to just jump back into the universe.
So fitting. I am so excited for the release of those books. Like, I actually don't even know what to do with myself. I'm so excited. So yeah. So I'm going to pop up. I'm going to random generate a name. One name for Sid, one name for me. And we're going to have to defend that character as if we're in court with them, whether they're innocent, guilty, or straight to jail. So come along with us as we enter that situation.
Yeah.
And
court is in session.
Here we go. I'm scared. Who's it going to be? Gee, okay, you have Lucian and I have Amryn.
Okay.
I have to remember what Amryn did. It's been years since I read this freaking book.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so I'm going to defend Lucian's innocence. I think he is treated too harshly by the ACOTAR fandom.
Ooh, okay, let's hear it.
Hot take, perhaps. Let's do pros and cons really quickly. Pros is that towards the end of the series, he really does try to make amends and fix things. And he shows up to the night court. He really wants to take care of Elaine. He tries to make efforts to fix his bond with Farah. He tries to get in good graces with Rhysand. So his moral compass is in the right place. Cons is he is Tamlin's little joker. And I think that's where he gets misunderstood because everybody knows that Tamlin is the most hated character of the universe. And I mean, next to the Queen, he is the most hated character. He really screwed Farah. He really screwed Rhysand. And I think Lucian gets a lot of his backlash. And I don't think that's quite fair. I think that you cannot defame my client Lucian because of his preceptor's actions. Okay?
Right.
I understand.
But they do say, be careful who your friends are, or like look and see who your friends are because it's a good indicator of who you are as a person.
Yes. But during her time in the Spring Court, Lucian, through everything, treated her very, very well. I would say arguably of all of them, the best. He, in the Spring Court, really did try to advocate for her. I know that there were some flops in that and he couldn't get away with too much, but he did try. I will say the effort was there. It's not like he stood back silently. Sure. And to the same argument, be careful with who your friends are and you'll be influenced with them. Rhysand has done some deplorable things and his squad has had to stand back and say, this is my leader and I will follow them. And I think the way the courts work in ACOTAR is there is a very loyal following for each of the people that run their respective court. And so I think it's not necessarily Lucian's fault that he was born into the position of having to be, Tamlin's number 2, and he doesn't have to always agree with what he did. And he did try to fix it, though Tamlin's efforts were bleak towards the end of the series.
To put it
I think Lucian's efforts to show up for Elaine, and not only for Elaine, but prove that his only reasoning for being there wasn't just his hypothetical mate with Elaine. He also continued to try and help Farah where he could and give her any assistance that he felt like he could offer. He tried to fight with Rhysand's army of people, or at least train with them and learn their skills. He tried to be of benefit, and when he couldn't, he tried to stay out of their way. And I will say that you are not just your actions. And even though he did do some things when he was scared of revering from Tamlin's path, he did make up for it or try to. And he is not the one that chose to isolate Farah. He is not the one that forced her to be locked in that bedroom.
No.
He is not the one that tried to trick her into love. He is not the one that tried to kidnap her or kill her mate or any of that. The worst thing he did was stand by and do nothing. That is his biggest.
But that's a big famous MLK quote where it's like, it's not going to be the actions of your enemies that startle you, but like the inaction of your friends. I'm totally misquoting that.
No, but I know what you're trying to say, and I agree with you. However, had he not tried to come back to the Night Court and fix things after the sisters were put into the cauldron, had he just then resided himself and like come to terms with the fact that he was just going to be this way, then I would be like, okay, grow a pair and stand the fuck up and do something.
Yeah.
However, my client went through a moment of clarity when the sisters were put in the cauldron and
Right.
realized that there were things he needed to stand for that were bigger than his relationship with Tamlin. And I think
Yeah.
that there is some sort of reclaiming of his narrative in doing that. And it's a work in progress. There's still 2 more books to be said in this universe. But I think
More.
the effort to change holds some value.
You know what? Okay, wait. For anybody that has made it this far and hasn't left the video that has not read ACOTAR, essentially it's a court system that exists in a fantasy land. Everyone owns over there's high lords within the different court system. It's spring, summer, fall, winter. Then there's the night, dawn, and day. So there's a bunch of different courts and different high lords reside over these different places. Farah, our main female protagonist, she kills a wolf in the woods. It's like a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. She goes through the woods and she kills a beast, and then she is taken by another beast and has to live with them in order to pay like this penance, and has like a certain amount of time to like help save this place from this horrible person who you find out if you're going to read the book. And she dates Tamlin, who he eventually becomes not who you think he is, which is an experience. And then he has his best friend, Lucian, and he's kind of like his right-hand man in a sense. So that is his backstory.
If you have read, then you understand that Lucian is to Tamlin how Azriel is to Rhysand.
Yeah. And Azriel's like his
number one, like, doer of things.
Yeah.
Like, that's who takes care of his business for him.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that there is some reclaiming of his narrative in trying to be better. And although it is a work in progress, and my client thus far has claimed that he will continue to do so, I think that even though it is not perfect and he has not resolved and paid amends for all of his mistakes, it is a big thing and takes somebody to really be willing to rid themselves of their ego to sulk up to the very people that he hurt.
I would say there's something very redeemable. I will say there's something very redeemable about recognizing what you did wrong and coming back around. However, it brings up an interesting topic because didn't Tamlin realize what he did wrong and he apologized? And are we willing to accept that apology?
But he apologized once and then hasn't done anything. It's all in the actions. Now, words only mean so much. Like, Tamlin can apologize and he helped her escape one battle, but he has not tried to make amends with the Night Court in a very respectable way. He has just been hell on wheels for an entire fucking 700 pages. And Lucian apologized, but he showed up in actions.
But earlier you did say that it's not about your actions. It's not about
No, but he's not just his actions and his faults. Like, he's not just the mistakes he made. But you can't fix mistakes with just words and not prove that those mistakes won't occur again. And Tamlin, I fear, has made many apologies throughout this season or this series. He has made many apologies to Farah at the wedding and then underground and with his sisters. And I mean, he has really just spoken a lot of shit out of his ass. And done nothing to actually show up and prove that not only he wants to help her, but if you know the story, then you know that Farah's biggest thing is that it's not just about her. It's about her blood family and her non-blood family. And Tamlin helping her out of one battle is not making amends to the people in her life that were hurt by his actions to her. And Lucian has showed up for Elaine, but he's also made efforts. He made efforts with Nesta. Everybody knows this. He has made efforts with Rhysand, despite the fact that Rhysand cannot tolerate his guts. But there has been some actionable redeemable movement there.
Okay. I as the obviously I'm the judge in this. We're still ironing out the kinks of this whole court system that we're making up here. I think that I'm acting as the judge, and I would say he's
Yep.
innocent. Like, you did a great job defending him. I'm not really a Lucian slay. If I have to read 900 pages, which I think is the length of the second book that Sarah J. Maas is releasing in January, of fucking Lucian and Elaine, I don't know what I'm gonna read it, obviously. I'm gonna trust her because I think it's gonna be really good regardless, but I'm gonna be eating my words for these past 5 years that I have been experiencing this story because they're not my favorite couple, nor am I really, like, seeking to read their perspective. So
Yeah, I agree. I can get behind that. Court case number 1 adjourned.
now I'm defending Amryn. So the thing is, like, she doesn't really. Okay, now we're gonna get court open again.
Court ends.
Okay, so my client, Amryn, is not from this world. Okay, like, she comes from somewhere else completely and is escaping, basically seeking refuge in Prithian. And so with that same moral code, you would understand that her brain and what she does operates very different than the way that we operate, right? So by that standard, we can't expect her to act the same way. I feel like the most problematic thing that Amryn did is shove Farah in the cauldron right before the war and kind of potentially seem like a traitor the whole time, which, as a side tangent, I actually would have been more down for that storyline, like throw a wrench in the plan and like for her to be a traitor the whole time would have been really interesting to me. But I wouldn't say that her intentions were great. And I think that though intention does not erase impact, we should look at the overarching success rate. She saved thousands of lives with this action of all of the corruption that would have come from this horrible king that would have taken over, all of these horrible things that would have happened. Like, she saved a lot of people by hurting one person. And sometimes I do think that is the better choice to make in terms of this circumstance. And when it comes to war, I mean, like, Farah wasn't winning any awards how she treated in certain places during the war, if you know what I mean.
Okay, my first hole to poke is, do you think that Amryn was a bit too self-motivated to be a team player? Because she wasn't actually herself. Like, she was inhabiting a human body, but it wasn't actually her. And she was instead something that could be seen as evil and vile by the people of Prithian. And so by shoving Farah in the cauldron, but also she was so concerned about Farah being able to track all of those objects and those things to, like, put the cauldron back together. And some of that we learned was a bit self-motivated because she wanted to go home. She didn't want to be here anymore. But she also served Rhysand and agreed to take care of Farah and him, and at all costs promised that she would protect Farah.
But protecting Farah also means that protecting her from the realities of what it would look like if she were living under the King of Highborn. Like, what if she had to live under the reality of a corrupt leader?
Okay.
I'd go into the cauldron for that, dare I say. If I knew that it was going to save so many people, like, am I really hurting anybody? No. Also, there's nothing wrong with wanting to go back to where you're from. And number 2, if going back to where you're from also saves thousands of people, who cares?
But what is the justification for drowning Farah in the cauldron?
She didn't drown her, first of all.
She held her head under the bubbling waters of the cauldron.
Okay, but that didn't drown. Like, you could stay underwater for a long time. Longer than your body even thinks you're capable of doing. So you know what? And also, she doesn't see that. So she's just like she sees the human body as something that's like, or the Fae body as something that's like, okay, like this is happening, but it's not like forever. Your soul is forever. And Farah's soul wants to be with Rhys. So by whatever means necessary for the two of them to be together and for the two of them to live over and rule over a successful, thriving society, girlfriend, Farah had to make some sacrifices herself as queen. That's kind of the thing that happens when you want a ruler. Yeah.
That's really the only, I think if anybody's read the book, that's really like the only downfall of Amryn with that one moment.
Other than like her just like general like disinterest in
everything.
Yeah.
But she was very good for Nesta. She did so much for her.
She did.
There's really not much negative discourse about Amryn in general either. She's a pretty neutral character. Like, she made the Greek sacrifice at the end, but throughout the story, her purpose really just serves as this like illusion and like weird, funky side character. I'm sure there's a greater purpose.
that's the holder of a lot of really ancient knowledge and, like, knows things
Yeah.
and drinks blood, which is cool, okay. Little court system, we're still working out the details, ironing out the details, figuring it out, but I think it could be fun to do, like, tropes or maybe versing different characters in different universes and having to defend them, or
Like adaptations, book versus movie, things
Mhm.
of that nature. But we
Mhm.
just want to start with two in a series that we're very familiar with, and it felt like we could have defended without a moment's notice.
Um,
So that was our attempt at page three book court.
don't worry, we'll be back and it'll be a little bit more seamless, but thanks for joining us. And if you're new here, then you don't know that we do a book of the month, which if you don't know, this month is God of the Woods by Liz Moore, and we are loving it. So for book of the month, if you're new here, we just split the book up into 4 different sections or however many weeks in the month there are, and then we read those sections at liberal and talk about them and just talk about our opinions and our feelings about them.
If you've read this book at all, then you know that the sections or the chapters are not titled by chapter. They're titled by the person's name whose perspective you're getting. So I'm going to say chapter number, but you would have to count this out by looking at the table of contents. But
Yeah.
we read sections 49 through 72 for this week. And yeah, that's all I was
24 sections each, is a bit of a doozy, if you will. She's a big book, but we're loving every single second of it.
Yes. So the last thing that happened before we started this section was Jesse saying he didn't want his sister to marry Jean Paul, or like basically they had a conversation in the kitchen when she came home and he said, "Let me guess, you're engaged to Jean Paul." It was basically that conversation. The first thing that happens in this section is that they go on the survival trip. This
Okay.
section's main portion.
So, survival trip, which I had been waiting for that moment because I thought that it was gonna be, like, a really pivotal point in the novel generally. I was excited to see how it worked. I was also really surprised that the survival trip even existed in the first place because that would so not fly in 2020.
Yeah.
Like, it would we're not in 2020, we're in 2026. That would so not fly now. Like, there's no way that parents would ever
Totally.
let their kids go on a survival trip for 3 days in Adirondack woods where it's easy to get fucking lost. There's no fucking way that that would ever happen. But I think something that I really enjoyed about and the thing that I really just continually respect about this novel is the characters that we experience and the different things that happen and just how we can switch so easily between all of these different characters and feel like we're so deeply immersed into the story despite it switching perspectives almost every single chapter. So why don't you read us your thoughts?
Okay, I have them listed in order of
Yes.
chapter or section. So Tracy's deep anxiety about truth or dare makes me so sad for her because I actually get it a lot, but I loved the realization that she was actually enjoying being her age. Also, Barbara kissing Tracy's crush made me super sad for her, but it was also a bonding moment between the two of them because it's the first time she had a friend that was close enough to her to know where to stab her where it would hurt. And I think there's something innocent about that almost, where it's like the first time that these things would hurt her feelings because it was actually from somebody that meant something to her.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated the inclusion
I
of
also think
that.
it's, like, so interesting because, like, God, it brought when I was reading the whole Truth or Dare thing, like, that brought me so back to when I would play Truth or Dare and just be, like, so anxious, and
Yeah.
Tracy, like, she doesn't have, like, a lot of friends at home, and, like, her life is completely uprooted, and I thought the interesting thing was, like and I thought the most fascinating thing was, like, Tracy felt like she actually could be herself and then felt bad for the first time ever for Barbara when she couldn't be herself because her whole life and her whole family has always been about controlling her and manipulating her and all of this stuff, like,
Yeah.
gnarly.
Totally. I also said that Barbara admitting that she wouldn't have been born if Bear hadn't disappeared and saying she wished that. And the fact that Tracy had the emotional maturity to understand that it wasn't a comment of sadness, but just of truth. Like the fact that she had resigned herself to understanding, like, yeah, I wouldn't have been born if my parents didn't need another kid, essentially. And I just think that's like a really crazy realization to have at their age and to be able to talk about and go through. And I think the further we got into this section, the more clear it was that Barbara needed to develop these skills of emotional maturity to get through her family and get through the
Totally.
life she was enduring. So I thought that was really interesting. And
And the skills that you have to develop when you have, like, emotionally immature parents. I thought
yes,
that was a really interesting thing too about that whole section and that whole realization is, like, Barbara had to realize that, like and I think that's such an interesting thing to, like, know that they had one son, and the like assumption the entire time, which is like, we just have one son, like the family, just, you have a son and that's how it's gonna go, and there's just gonna be one child and it's not up for debate. Like, the lingeringness of all of that is so interesting to me. Like, and further into the story and like in the section stuff, I think it's interesting how all the Peters become like one entity almost,
Yeah.
and like they're just like a moving force of just like Peters.
Yeah.
And that, like, them all having the same name is so smart because they're also just all, yeah, it's fascinating.
Totally. I couldn't have said it better. Barbara also mentions in this bonding moment with Tracy that Tracy was like, "Is it okay that you're not sneaking out tonight?" And it was after Barbara had
Yeah.
cut herself on accident. And she
Yeah.
was like, "Is it okay that you're not sneaking out tonight?" And she said, "Probably not." And at this point, I have had suspicions thus far that it is to go see Jean Paul.
Yes, that's what I thought the whole fucking time. I was like, she's gonna go see John Paul, like, and she's not gonna be able to go and see him and she's gonna get in trouble because he's an abusive fucking asshole. That's
Yeah. So when she admitted to Tracy that she didn't think it was going to be okay, that's so far. I know that there's not like really any other theories to have about this because she hasn't said anything else about a boyfriend. And the only person that I could suspect that like would kind of dig at her parents would be John Paul. So that being said,
I also think it's really interesting. Like, I'm continually struck by how, and I think it's interesting and almost symbolic in and of itself that Barbara and Bear's stories are so intertwined. And like the fact that this story, right, like the physical story itself started because Barbara went missing. That's the whole reason that the story is being told, is because Barbara went missing. And the interconnectedness, like, it's almost interesting how still, even though her brother has been gone for 13 years, missing, her being gone is once again overshadowed by her brother, like her entire existence was. Like, it's so symbolic the way that they only talk about Bear. They don't only talk about Bear, but they talk about Bear so much when they talk about Barbara's disappearance. It's like they're trying to figure out Bear's disappearance and Barbara's at the same time, and like this total like weaving of it. It's like Barbara never gets the spotlight. Like, she's continually overshadowed by her brother who's missing, or, you know, we don't know what happened to him. There's no clear like evidence or anything, and they're saying that it was this person that died, Carl, which I fucking hated, by the way, because I love Carl, and that he did not fucking do that. Obviously, we all know that. But like, I think that this, like, I'm just continually struck by how Barbara is overshadowed by Bear, even though he's
even in
dead.
his absence. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that one of thus far the most powerful things about this book is its ability to make me suspicious of everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody's innocent to me thus far. And actually, the only person who is innocent to me, strangely enough, is Jacob. I have
Yes.
full assurance and confidence that he
Yes.
has nothing to do with this. And I think that he is the easy fall guy. I still am convinced he's the one who led Tracy back to the camp. There's no convincing me that he's not that person.
Yeah.
But he is the person that I believe has the most innocence, I guess.
I think it is really interesting that you bring that up, because when we first started reading her perspective, like very first in the very beginning of the book, like it was the very first time, I was like, I don't think this man's innocent. I don't think this man's guilty of anything. I don't think he's at first I was like, oh, like this poor guy has been subjected, like these people took his land. Like at first I was thinking like a totally different story for him. And I'm like, oh, like he just was shackled with this crime because of this horrible fate. Like, I don't know. I just thought he was innocent.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think that anymore, but he's not guilty of this crime, which I think is
That's
really,
more what I'm saying, is that in the initial sections, I just didn't really know what his objective was.
yeah.
Now, I do think he is a murderer, but I don't think he has anything to do with Bear or Barbara's case whatsoever. He's the only person I'm not suspicious of, which I think is just a lot to be said for the writing of this. And then also, very, very small note, but I think it was really, I think the way this author articulates children and the naivety and innocence of being at this age is very, very, very well done. And I think one of my favorite moments in this section was when they're at that dance, the little dance thing. Tracy goes outside to sit with Walter, and Walter is talking about Lowell, and he says,
Oh my God, stop.
then he's saying how Barbara turned down Lowell, and she thinks that Walter's upset because Barbara didn't dance with either of them. And then he goes, "Isn't Lowell amazing? Isn't he wonderful?" And my God, like,
see how in one line this author delivers queer undertones. Like, I am continually struck by like the fact, like every comment about TJ, about how TJ is just a little bit weird or strange, or she wouldn't fit in certain places and all this stuff, which is because like she looks like a more androgynous woman and doesn't look like a stereotypical woman, and everyone assumes that she's gay or non-binary or whatever where I don't even think America has a long time from this story to even conceptualize the idea of what non-binary means, but I think it's so interesting the way that in like moments, like like I think she explained like the thing of like, isn't he so amazing and so incredible? Like in 2 lines.
It was literally 2 lines, like, their entire
Yeah.
conversation was 2 lines, and I think what I appreciate so much about the way of doing that is that I think in a lot of books I've read, when it comes to, like, representation of literally any group of people, like any minority group, there's always one token character. It's
Yeah.
their entire personality.
Yeah.
It's something they talk about in every single moment that they have the light on them,
Yeah.
and I think that that's just a very cheap way
Totally.
of articulating these things, and I think the way that our author never once explicitly states, is TJ lesbian? Is Lowell gay? Does Walter have a crush on him? The fact that there is not one direct comment, but we have still all come to the same understanding is such a genuine thoughtfulness in writing these characters that comes from somebody who truly wants to represent this type
Yeah.
of thing. And I think it just shows how deeply Liz Moore like really actually cares about how this is represented.
And the realities of it being like shown, like the queer representation being shown, and in light of it being in 1975 and like in 1961 when Bear first went missing, they talk about TJ's like early experiences, right? And like when she was first, with Bear and they were really great friends, whatever. I just think that the development of them, like they're just the undertones of that, like I don't know. I
I
love.
just really appreciate it, and it doesn't take on that stereotypical, like, I've read books where there's like a gay male main character
Yeah.
and his entire personality is his voice and his shoes and is this, and it follows the exact stereotype that like everybody in the world pinpoints as what a gay man is like, and that is not the majority of people, and it's not fair to like just make that the mascot of what this is like. And so I just appreciated so much the way she also, especially handling it like beyond TJ but with the kids, like because a child, like it was not realistic that Walter was going to sit and be like, I think I like Lowell. Like that's not how that interaction was going to happen during this time period at this age to this person. Like I just think it was articulated so well for the age.
So well for the age. I also thought she was gonna go out there and it was gonna be like that she was gonna try to open the can of like Walter and Tracy and like pop
Yeah.
out like the two like outsiders or the ones that are not chosen, like that type of situation. And when it wasn't, I was so satisfied. Like God, I love this fucking story.
And then my last couple of comments were finding out that Barbara goes to TJ's place every night, and that just has my wheels spinning. I don't think TJ is innocent, but I don't think she's being harmful, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think she's causing any harm to Barbara, and I don't think she had any hand in, like, hurting Bear or Barbara ever, but I do think she's wrapped up in this somehow.
I think she was wrapped up in this, and I thought this the whole time. I thought that she played a role in this story in some capacity. I think when that thing popped open, when the little boy said that, and like the way that it was revealed, and like this little boy like not realizing like what he's saying, that like sadness of it,
Or
and like
the implications of it, and him being scared to lose the older kids' like impressions of him.
and like also just like the realize that kids are so intuitive and they intuitively know that what he's saying is like, that's why I think it's so interesting because he's not saying anything like he's just reporting what is done. Like he doesn't know exactly why that is wrong, but he
just
somehow
knew
knows
it was.
but he knew it was, which is such an interesting, like in the way that he described, like says, and his parents are standing there like trying to support him. And it's just like this it was fucking crazy.
Yeah. And then my last 2 comments, and this is where this section wraps up on a massive cliffhanger. And the first one is fuck Delphine and Peter. And I called it from the beginning that Delphine was a snake. Fuck that shit so bad. You're
God.
a fucking snake. Like, you spent the entire first half of Alice's life belittling her, making her feel like she wasn't smart enough, wasn't good enough. Then you set her up with this man under the guise that you and your husband, who you're so loyal to, love him. And then she goes out of her way to include you in these festivities in a family that she is struggling to fit into because you shoved her there, and your decency is to go sleep with her husband.
I know.
What the fuck? What the fuck? Absolutely the fuck not. And then
When Tracy was in the closet and when they went back to her house and Barbara's so upset, like, and she's so, 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 so upset. The first thing that I thought was like, oh, I think he's just sleeping with like one of the actresses. And then when Alice goes on her whole monologue, and she's like, if it would have been like a weekly thing, like if it would have been like somebody that was just a fling, like I think it would have hurt way less. Your sister, who, first of all, your sister who you compare yourself to your whole life because Alice doesn't feel smart enough. Also, Alice's character as a whole, I feel like we could do an entire episode on Alice's character and her complexities and how like crazy her life is and her circumstances and her internal landscape and the things that she's been through. Like, I forget how much happened in this section. Like, there's
yeah.
a lot that like, because the
And the
pursuit is
last
just to figure out what happened. Like, that's what the interesting thing. Like, you're reading to figure out what happened to Barbara and Bear. Like, that's what you're reading for. Like, that's
yeah.
what.
But you're getting so much more than that.
So you're getting this whole thing. And I went to a bookstore recently because I was like said, and I picked the books for book of the month for the podcast. And I was like, please, like, I'm reading this book right now. I'm so obsessed with it. I want to read like a million times. I want to read this like book a million times more because I love the like development of it. It's not a mystery. Like it's about families and like their complexity and like the connections of like generational trauma and like how money corrupts and like all of these and how different people can influence. It's just such an interest, and I love being able to develop, and I love the way that she writes all of these different characters so distinctly. I know I've said that every single time we talk about this book, but
it can't be said enough. It is truly
so
one of the
impressive.
greatest things.
It's so impressive to me.
Yeah. The last thing that we haven't touched on a lot this section, because though it is these two characters are extremely prevalent in this section, basically we need to touch on Judy real quick and her ability to interact with Jacob. And we find out that so Judy is constantly trying to prove herself, and that is a conversation that we could do also a whole episode on another time. But Judy trusts herself and trusts her gut to think that she can do this thing with Jacob and sit in that room with him and get the evidence from him. And he proves her right. He will not talk to the males in the room, and then he gives her a call, and we literally leave off. The last page of this section is him saying, I know where Bear is, but I didn't kill him. And
That
he
was
only says it to Judy.
crazy. Okay, yeah. So
I also love Hayes now. I know last time I said that I was really feeling skeptical of him, but I've actually just realized that this book makes you suspicious of everybody. And so his niceties towards Judy made me inherently suspicious of him. Also because her storyline is like talking about how she gets treated differently for being a woman in the task force that she's on. So I was immediately suspicious of like the most predominant male in her storyline was Hayes. But I actually have so much respect for how he handled putting her in that room with Jacob and how he's handled this entire thing. And he's very much become one of my favorite little niche side characters. And he has like not a lot of play in this story so far, but I appreciate him a lot.
I appreciate him a lot too. And I think that when Judy or Yudita, whenever she went in the room, like it reminded me so much of Silence of the Lambs because it's like this distinctive like predator and prey circumstance. But like, I also just love that she was like playing into, and like the description that she used of like the men watching her and like him asking her these really direct questions and being like, damn, I don't want like this weird type of like male gaze, but not male gaze. It's like male ears, like listening to her, like talking about all these things. Like, it's such an intimate thing. And like, in order to be, and I didn't think about this, but like, in order to be like an investigator, right? And like to really do it, like Judy gives up a lot of parts of herself to be like invested in this case. I mean, she sleeps at a fucking motel every single night to be there. Like she does all of these different things. I just find it so fascinating that like she's so, once again, so distinctly and like a couple sentences, a couple like small phrases is able to so perfectly explain and experience like a lot of women have had where you just like know that a man is listening and you're just immediately assuming that like they're going to judge you in this specific way. Like, isn't he so awesome? Isn't he so amazing? Like, are you serious? Like, that's just such like a, I don't know, the undertones of this, like this novel like lives and breathes in like its reflections about life and like the human experience. It's just every great novel, but like, wow, this one is just like,
I also think you said the predator and prey thing, and that reminded me of something I wrote down that I think the biggest paradox of that entire scene is that she is sitting next to a killer who kills adult women, and that is what he has proven to do.
Yeah.
And the predators are actually on the other side of the glass. Like, the people that are most vicious to her and can cause her the most harm is not the killer in front of her, but the men standing on the other side of the glass. And I think that paradox was just crazy to me reading that and hearing her fear of talking to Jacob disappeared instantaneously into their conversation. But her fear of the people on the team that she worked with behind her
Yeah.
only grew. And I
And
think
judging
that
her and all these things. The thing that pissed me off the most was when they opened the door and they took her out of there. She said, "No, I could have kept going. Like, I could have kept going." I thought that was really interesting too, because like they were getting to like the heat of like the moment of like, and he's gonna reveal things to her, and I was like, and then like the power because she's a woman, she's the only one that's able to talk to her. But also I feel like that's discrediting like how great of like just a detective. She's like the one that's like figuring this out. This guy that had been brought and like got the because he like figured out who killed Bear, but didn't really, and everyone's like I love how all the investigators have all collectively decided they don't like the chief
yes.
guy. She's so intuitive and so into it and so great at her job, and that still because he's like a man who hunts women. Wow, so good.
Yeah.
I mean, not
That's where
great.
we
Yeah.
No, I know what you're saying. So yeah, that's where we left off. Those are our thoughts and reflections. This upcoming section, the last section of this book, I'm really sad to see it
Yeah, I'm
go.
so excited. I mean, I'm so sad, but I'm also excited to see like what happens and all the things.
At the conclusion, and I want to reflect on how I feel about that. Like, I
Yeah,
think with all of what we've talked about.
yeah.
This section is 73 through 96, so it is whatever is left, basically. I can't remember if that comes out to exactly 24, but basically just read till you get to the last page, and you'll be with us.
Yeah.
So
We hope you're enjoying Book of the Month. If you're joining us, we're so grateful. You don't even understand how grateful we are. We love Book of the Month. It's like my favorite thing. I've listened to the book every single day. I read the book every single day. I'm obsessed with it. Obsessed with
yeah.
just the book and being able to talk about books. So if you haven't read it yet, go pick it up.
Also, get really excited because next week when you finish this book, you get to figure out what we picked for April.
I'll give you a slight spoiler, which is I told Sid, please, can we make it a lighter hearted? But I do love this book, but damn, is it dark and heavy? So I said, Sid, can we please have something a little bit light and bright, which is the one little spoiler I'll give to you all.
Yes.
So stay tuned. We'll see you in the next chapter. Thanks for hanging out with us. Bye.
We love you. Bye.